Welcome, seventh graders. This video is to walk through the design cycle. It's something that you're going to be using every day in GTT class. It's how you're being graded, and we're going to do 4 things to just kind of break down what the design cycle is and give you a refresher on that. So first thing is going to be, what is it? Then you're going to have a chance to take a few notes. I'll copy it down for you to write in your design notebook. And then I'm going to give you a sample of how I have used the design cycle recently, and then you'll have the opportunity to write down how you can use the design cycle too. So step number 1 is asking, what is it? And so I want to break down what you're going to see in GTT class with the design cycle. It's these 4 steps. It's inquiring and analyzing, developing ideas, creating the solution, and evaluating. And with those 4 steps, that is actually how you're being graded also in your grade book. And that's the school lingo of what we use in GTT, but I want to simplify it a little bit more and break it down into our own language of just making it a little bit more simple. So with that, it's who, what, where, when, why of the design cycle. Who uses it? All of us do. Whether you're aware of it or not, you have used the design cycle both in school and out of school. And that's because what is the design cycle? It's when you solve a problem, you go through the design cycle. You go through the steps mentally when you're making a decision or doing an activity. Where do you do it? Everywhere, even outside of school. When? Anytime you're making a decision, solving a problem, doing an activity, or especially in GTT class, it's going to be how you document your work. And lastly, why? It's to solve problems and, like I said, to document your work in GTT class. So going back to this, notice that it's not just going to be step 1 is this, step 2 is this, step 3, step 4. There are arrows going in every which direction because you may go from one part, such as developing ideas, and then straight to evaluating that. You may then jump back to inquiring and analyzing, so there's no particular order, which is why it's a cycle. You're going to be cycling through each of the 4 steps. So next I want to break down, though, what each of these 4 steps are. What is inquiring and analyzing, and what is developing ideas, and so on. So for that, we're going to do some note taking. At this point, you should open up your design notebook and get to this spot right here. So in your design notebook, you can see where I'm located. I'm going to fill it out along with you and go down to where you see inquiring and analyzing. And I'm going to write down the definition, and I'll type pretty quickly. So if I type something, I encourage you to hit pause, type it into your own design notebook, the notes that I'm writing down, and then once you have it written down, you can resume the video to go on to the next step. So inquiring and analyzing, the definition that we're going to use is the step where we identify the problem and investigate. And the ways we're going to use this in GTT is most commonly going to be researching, asking questions, and having background information of whatever it is we're doing. We have to know what the problem is. We have to ask questions and get background information before we can do all those other steps, whether it's planning or actually doing the activity. So then the next part, developing ideas, and if you haven't finished writing down the notes that I just did, again, hit pause. Once you have it written in, then you can resume the video at this point. So for developing ideas, this is where the definition is going to be creating a plan. And when we do that, when we are developing ideas, the most common thing we do is drawings is one way, or blueprints. We brainstorm or collaborate with other people, and we make decisions. And this is what forms our plan. Then the next step of creating the solution, definition I'm going to write down is following my plan. So whatever I did in developing ideas to create my plan, I am now executing that, and that's what creating the solution is. And so the ways we're going to see it in GTT class is going to be doing the activity, whether it's testing it, building it, or making something. So I'm going to put testing, building, and making. Okay. Again, hit pause if you need to fill that in, if I'm going a little bit too fast. And then the last part is evaluating. The definition that we're going to write down for what evaluating is when we reflect or reflecting on all our steps. And so by reflecting or evaluating, it's when we're asking ourselves, was it successful? Why or why not? How can it be improved? So when we think of those questions, we're evaluating and reflecting on those steps. So those are the definitions of what each of those 4 parts of the design cycle are. And I want to go back then to just breaking down the design cycle. It's something that we're using anytime we solve a problem. And so I want to give it a sample that I recently used the design cycle, and you don't have to copy this part down, but when I had to buy a new cell phone recently, I've had my cell phone for over 5 years, and it wasn't sending text messages all the time. I wasn't getting some of them, and so I knew it was time to get a new cell phone. So before I actually bought one, I went through the design cycle in my head. Did I actually write this down and present it to anybody? No, I didn't, but I still went through these steps so that I didn't just go to a store and buy one random phone. I'm actually thinking through the process of it. So when I bought my phone, what that looked like was for inquire and analyzing is researching questions and background information. So for research, I actually looked up then articles such as this one to help guide my decision, which phones are going to be the best, and it gives reasons why. So in my design notebook, instead of just typing in research, I'm going to actually present the research in my design notebook. And so for that, I'm going to copy and paste my link here. Didn't work. Try one more time. There we go. So that's one way that I did inquiring and analyzing, but then I had to ask myself questions of how much money am I willing to spend? There are cell phones out there that are around $1,000, and I had to ask myself, what's going to be my budget? And so I have to ask that question and get that information before I can start making my own plan. And then the other way I did it was, if I want to, do I want an iPhone or Android? So I'm asking myself those questions, kind of getting background information of what my plan is going to be. Now notice the first one was in blue, and that's because it is a must do. You must give at least one example of how you did the design cycle for each of these once it's your turn. And then the next 2 are in orange, and so you should do these. And then if you wanted to go above and beyond, I'm not going to do that right now, but for you, you would have 2 more to do in the aspire to do. So there'd be 5 examples for each. So that's how I did inquiring and analyzing with my cell phone when I was buying a cell phone, but I also did each other part of the design cycle. So for developing ideas, when I'm creating my plan, whether it's blueprints, drawings, brainstorming, I talked with my wife to figure out, number one, help me figure out which one I want to do. And that's giving me different ideas. But I also have to collaborate with the cost of things and what I'm going to be willing to buy and form my plan. Next then is looking up phones. And if I knew my plan is to get the iPhone XS, I would actually insert the picture of it or a blueprint or drawing. I'm not going to draw it out. Instead, I'm going to just take the image and copy it into my design notebook. right, so that step there, I got 2 things for how I did developing ideas. Here we go. And then the third one was knowing that on Amazon, after looking up at different things in research, Amazon was going to be the cheapest option for me to get this phone rather than buying directly from Apple. So those are 3 ways I did developing ideas when buying a cell phone. Next then is creating the solution, which is when I'm testing it, making it, whatever it is that my plan was. My plan was to buy the cell phone from Amazon, so I purchased the phone from Amazon. And then next from there, I'm actually testing it out, but by testing it out, I am texting Mr. Severson to make sure that I can text and that he's able to send back text messages and then my phone is actually working. And then from there, I'm just going to browse the phone's features. And I'm testing it out. I'm figuring out, do I like this phone at that point, and just figuring out how to use it. And then the last part is evaluating. And so when I need a new cell phone and I actually got the phone, I did all those steps, I'm asking myself, is this successful? Do I like this phone? Could it be improved? And so for this, I'm going to say, I like the phone because it works. I was sick of having a phone that wasn't sending things all the time, so I'm evaluating that I like it for that reason. I can also say, though, that I wish it had the home button as a way to be improved. How could it be improved? I wish it had the home button, and that's me evaluating that cell phone. And one other thing is I recommend the phone to other people. So when I bought my cell phone, I just showed you how I went through all 4 steps of the design cycle. And now you are going to have the opportunity to do it, but you're going to have a different, that was for me doing cell phone, you're going to have a different topic. Your topic is going to be when you're bored. When you're bored, how do you go through the design cycle? And so go to your design notebook, and this is going to be your activity where you have to type in inquiring and analyzing. What do you do that when you're bored, whether it's researching ideas, what questions do you have to ask yourself, what background information, and you'll go through all 4 steps of this in your design notebook.